Welcome to Behavioral Groups, the podcast that explores our groove at work. I'm Kurt Nelson.
And I'm Tim Houlihan. Kurt, let me ask you something. Have you ever walked out of a conversation with your work colleagues or maybe a client saying, yeah, we're totally aligned, only to realize later that you were talking about two completely separate and different things?
No, it's never happened.
No, okay.
Just had to check. No, of course it is. There was a time I was working with my team when I had talked with the client, and now I had to bring back this information to the team so that we could all work on this project together. And we had a great conversation, and everybody's ready to go. Boom, here we go. There we go. Yay. Yay. And a couple days later, they come back with what they were, and I'm going, what is this? This is not what I asked about. This is not what we were talking about. And they're going, yes, it is. So obviously there was some mix up there where, hey, I thought we were all like this and we were really like this. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that gap, right? That gulf sometimes between what we think people are doing and what we're actually doing is exactly what our guest today, Maya Rossignac-Milon, is what she studies. And she calls it shared reality. It's this idea that it's not enough to communicate the basics. Our communication and our work is more productive when we feel like we're seeing and interpreting the world in the same way. Now, one reason this is so uncommon might be due to the fact that we're not paying attention to the real relationships that we have with other people that we work with.
And when we don't have those real relationships, Tim, when we don't actually interpret the world that we're viewing together in the same way, things can break down, like me and my team, right? And you can end up, or you can end meetings without being on the same page, and that leads to rework, which I experienced, extra effort down the road, which I experienced, right? Collaboration is hard, and it gets harder, and trusty roads and even simple tasks become more complicated than they should because, as Maya says, we're not truly aligned.
Yeah. But then when we do have that shared reality, it can change everything. Like when we actually have this shared reality and we feel aligned with the people around us, then our work life becomes more productive. Workflows go more smoothly, relationships deepen, and our sense of meaning at work increases and amplifies.
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the things, Tim, that I found fascinating in this conversation that you had with Maya, and I say you because I was stuck in Montana at an airport delayed because of fog. We won't go there. No. So when you spoke with Maya alone then, because I was unavailable. So anyway, one really fascinating thing that you guys talked about was that study that was conducted during the early months of the pandemic, right? And Maya found out that the frontline healthcare workers who had a shared reality with their romantic partner, they weren't part of that healthcare worker cohort, right?
Yeah.
But they were able to cope better with those intense stressors at work because it reduced like the larger part of uncertainty in their life. I thought, whoa.
Yeah. Yeah, it is kind of mind-blowing, right? And it's a cool study that demonstrated that link between our personal lives and our work lives, right? That reducing uncertainty is a really big deal. And when we are likely to underestimate the impact that a really solid relation might have with our romantic partner, this is a time to rethink, wow, this really solid relationship we have could have a very positive impact on the way that we go to our work life.
Yeah. And this is one big thing that we want you, our listeners, to take away from this conversation with Maya. Developing relationships with your romantic partner around a shared reality is great. But if shared reality is so fundamental, why don't you spend more time intentionally building it with the people that you work with the most? You have an opportunity to amplify the meaning of your work life by deepening the relationship that you have with your coworkers. Isn't that right, Tim? I mean, you talked with Maya, right? And
so are you pointing to me? Is this?
Well, no. We have. Are we in alignment?
No, we are.
Are we? Are we sure? Do you know? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think we do a good job of it.
Are we in our groove here at work? Are we?
Yeah.
And does that alignment help us get into that groove at work?
It does. It absolutely does. It absolutely helps us. And so that's what today's conversation is really all about. How do we move beyond just exchanging information to actually having a shared reality? Because that reduces uncertainty. And when you reduce uncertainty, it builds productivity.
So, how do we start building shared realities with our coworkers? And how do we do it more intentionally?
Let's find out. So sit back and relax with an ice cold pitcher of shared reality and enjoy our conversation with Maya Rossignac-Milon. Maya Rossignac-Milon, welcome to Behavioral Grooves.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's great to be talking to somebody who's living in Barcelona right now. I just got to say, that's pretty great.
If I can send some sunny warmth all the way there.
If you could, it's a rainy and overcast day here in Chapel Hill, North Carolina.
No.
But
are you all affected by that blizzard from the Northeast?
Fortunately, not. That bomb cyclone, no, it didn't affect. At least it didn't affect us directly. I think we got some rain from it, but not terrible stuff. So we're going to start with a couple of silly speed round questions. It's our famous speed round that never goes as speedy as we want it to do. But would you start? Well, let's just start with, would you prefer to learn a new language or a new instrument?
Oh, I would probably pick a new instrument. I think it'd be really fun to learn. Which instrument? I'm not sure. But it would be really fun to learn. I feel like it's like learning a new language, but in a whole other way. And it would be a cooler experience, I think, than learning another language.
Like
a guitar or something like that. Be cool.
Excellent. Okay, second question. If you were given a house that cost you nothing to own or maintain, where would you want that house to be?
Ooh, wow. I mean, I don't know if it would be legal, but the Galapagos, maybe. It'd be pretty cool to, go swim with sea lions every day and chill with iguanas and giant tortoises. So that would
there might be
cool.
Some legal issues there. That might be, but hey, this is a dreamscape.
A little hut.
So it wouldn't be a huge mansion. It would
right.
You'd be respectful of the environment.
Exactly.
Of course you would. Yes. Okay. Excellent. Third speed round question. Is it true that professional relationships have more in common with personal relationships than we usually think?
Yeah, I think so. I think we tend to approach professional relationships as if, we kind of put on our tie and get really serious about them, when actually there's a lot of commonality between personal and professional relationships. And I think we would do well to inject a little more of the personal and the playful into those professional interactions.
I'm glad you said that. Not only because it's based on your research, but I happen to be reading Bree Goff's new book about how to have a fun day, and it's called "I Had a Fun Day," and it's about work, and it's about sort of making those relationships at work just really good relationships. Period. Not like, oh, it's a work relationship. Like, it's a relationship. And
because even if all we care about is our productivity at the end of the day, those relationships are going to dictate the productivity.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Okay. So we might have to come back to that. Maybe. Of course we will. We'll definitely talk about that. Last speed round question. Based on your data, can a shared reality with a romantic partner enhance the meaning of work, even if that partner isn't directly involved with the job?
Yeah. So this is research that was led by my former postdoc, Catalina Enestrom, who's now just started as a faculty member at Ditella in Argentina. And We find these really cool effects where people's romantic partners, it can really matter how much shared reality you have with your romantic partner for your work meaning, even if your romantic partner has nothing to do with your work life.
Okay, we're definitely going to come back to that as well, but we have to get to a couple of central themes here, Maya. And so let's discuss shared reality to start with. What do you mean by shared reality?
Yeah. So you know that feeling when you're with a close friend at an event and someone says something that reminds you both of an inside joke and you exchange a knowing glance across the room? Or
Yeah, I do.
I think we can all resonate, right? Or the feeling when you meet someone for the first time and you really hit it off and you're just riffing on each other, you're finishing each other's sentences, you're kind of jumping on the same wavelength immediately, and you feel like you click. So those are both instances of that feeling of shared reality, which is essentially the perception of sharing the same thoughts, feelings, beliefs, concerns with another person about something in the world around you or about the world at large.
Yeah, so this click feels very real to us, but you're saying it is a real thing.
Right. I mean, it's this experience that you can have where you feel like you have merged minds in some sense with the other person. And it's real in the sense that you can see it. It's observable. We can code for it when we watch people's interactions. You can tell when people have it. So it's not just in their heads, if that's what you're asking.
Yeah, well, that is because the work that I've done and Kurt and I have done in behavioral science, there's a lot of stuff that just happens in our minds that doesn't necessarily get represented on the outside world or is scientifically observable. But in this case, you're saying it really is. This is observable that when we feel like we click with someone, it's noticeable. Correct?
It's noticeable. Yeah, you can hear it. You can see it when people are interacting with each other. They tend to, well, obviously they agree with each other a lot, and you can see that saying things like "totally, that's so true." They'll say things like, "I was just about to say that. You read my mind." They'll also finish each other's thoughts and really build on what the other person is saying, and even sometimes say things at the same time. Have these moments of conversational synchrony.
And that can play out at work just as much as it can at, your cousin's wedding, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So these are integral to any conversation, I think, in any context. And that also goes for people you're just meeting for the first time. So we tend to think of it as something that's really essential in our close relationships. But my research also suggests that it's something that's essential in the very first conversations you have with someone you've just met, whether that's in your personal life at your cousin's wedding or, at a professional networking event.
Are there ripple effects from this? Yeah, I think you're implying that there are some ripple effects. Maybe could you talk about those for just a bit? What happens when we have that click moment? We realize that there is a shared reality, and then we start to expand on it. Where do we go from there, or what can come from there?
Yeah, thanks for asking that. So my research has found that shared reality has important relational effects and also intrapersonal effects. So in terms of interpersonal effects, we see greater closeness, greater support, greater commitment. And then in terms of intrapersonal, so within the individual, we see ripple effects and downstream consequences, like finding your work more meaningful and your life as a whole more meaningful, and ultimately performing better at the end of the day. That's what some of my yet to be published research is showing in the workplace.
So if I'm understanding this right, and I'm just going to take one particular element of the things that you talked about there, but if I have this shared reality, if I have this click moment with other people at work, it could actually impact my ability to achieve some of my goals at work. Am I understanding it correctly?
Finding and again, this is not yet peer reviewed, but in my most recent data, I found that when people experience a greater sense of shared reality with their colleagues, then relative to how much shared reality they usually experience with them. So these are within person effects. When they experience more shared reality, they find their work more meaningful. And in turn, they perform better at work as rated by themselves, but also as rated by their teammates, suggesting that they actually are. It's not just like a self-perception effect, but they are actually performing better in those moments when they feel more shared reality than they usually do.
Maya, the implications are pretty significant from this, aren't they?
So, I mean, if we haven't really established it causally yet, but if we extrapolate causality, then it does mean that boosting shared reality would be a really valuable thing for companies to be doing to help their employees experience more of that shared reality in the workplace and then ultimately perform better.
Hey Groovers, we want to take a moment away from our conversation to thank you for listening to Behavioral Grooves. If you enjoy the conversations we're having and want to help us keep the groove going, here are a few simple ways that you can support the show.
First off, subscribing to our Substack is a great way to stay connected with us between episodes. The weekly newsletter provides you with cool insights that are beyond the episodes, and they get delivered straight to your inbox.
And if you haven't already, leaving a review or a rating of the podcast on a platform like Apple or Spotify or YouTube helps other curious minds discover us. And there's two great things about that. One, it gives us a boost, and two, it costs nothing.
And it only takes a second, but it makes a huge difference for us. Plus, we love hearing from you, so don't be shy. Leave us a review or give us a quick thumbs up.
We're coming up on 500 episodes, and we're doing this because we love the conversations we have with our guests.
Yeah, we also want to do it because we love bringing you insightful, behavior-changing content every week, and we hope that some of those insights will help you find your groove. So this is a really interesting part of it. When I think about that click moment, for me, the click is this very organic, authentic, unscripted kind of experience, right?
Yeah.
Is it possible? Do you think? Because in behavioral science, we think a lot about context and environment and how much that influences our decision making. Is it possible that a company's culture could enable or amplify or facilitate the actual click moments that we have with each other?
Yeah, I love what you just said about going off script and that really authentic feeling, because what my work has shown is that feeling of authenticity and actually going off script is associated with creating more shared reality, not just for yourself, but also for the other person in the conversation. And so creating a work culture where you encourage people to be more spontaneous, perhaps more playful, and more authentic, a little bit more vulnerable. We don't have to ask people to talk about, the last time they cried at work, but just being a little bit more vulnerable than they might otherwise be in the workplace, especially because, like we were talking about earlier, people tend to be really stilted at work and to think they need to stick to the script at work more so than in the rest of their lives, when actually they might benefit from loosening up a little bit in the workplace. And so fostering that kind of culture, I think, could go a long way to facilitate shared reality.
It also, to me, sounds like there's a certain amount of psychological safety required as well in order to have that kind of...
Definitely. That's not something that I've studied yet or that we really know yet, but my intuition totally aligns with yours, that the more safety you would feel, the more you can voice your opinions without fear of backlash, the more authentic you can then be. And then the more you can feel like when you're coming to an agreement, that it's a true agreement, that you really have a shared reality. Because if you can't trust that, if you yourself aren't being authentic and you don't trust that the other people are being authentic, you might come to a consensus in conversation, which we tend to do, but you might walk away not being so sure that you actually have a shared reality about it.
Yeah, wow. That you just said so much there, that especially this idea, I think about like the difference between consensus and just obligation to go along, to
Especially
play. especially in the workplace, especially when the boss is shouting down the ideas that he or she doesn't agree with. I mean, that's not a place where you're going to get the best and brightest ideas.
Absolutely.
There's another, thank you for that. There's a term that you use in some of your research about being instrumental. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that, because I think it's a really, first of all, it's cool because instrument, it also has this meaning as a musical instrument. So I'm drawn to that. Okay. Let's just say that. But instrumentality from the perspective that you're studying it, can you talk a little bit about what it means and how you bring it into your work?
Yeah, so this research was led by my collaborator Abdo El Nakouri. He's now a faculty member at the University of Houston, and so in our projects we've looked at how instrumentality, which is the extent to which someone could be helpful for you in achieving your goals, that predicts the experience of shared reality. So we tend to create more shared reality with people that we view as more instrumental. And then in turn, the more shared reality we have with those instrumental people, over and above how close we feel to them, how much we like them, even how much we trust them, that sense of shared reality with those individuals. So you can imagine a mentor, or, in many of the contexts we study, these processes and study partners at school, that then predicts actual goal success. So we have one really neat study that found that college students who felt more shared reality with instrumental others then had higher GPAs at the end of the semester. So they were able to actually achieve their goals to a greater extent because of that shared reality.
That's remarkable. That again, I guess this relates back to the business discussion we were having earlier about when I have that sense of shared reality, I'm more apt to be achieving my goals and will have higher goal success, right? Higher achievement because of that shared reality. But this is kind of specific. This instrumentality has to do with very specific people. Am I reading that right, Maya?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. So how is it? I'm on one hand, my brain says, we could be kind of manipulative in this way. Like I could actually seek out that person that I want to be a mentor with, that I want to mentor me, because they're really influential in the organization. They have a lot of power. So I want to be in their good side. I want to achieve. I want to have star power within the organization. And so I work hard to figure out if I can click with them, and I try to set this up. Is it possible? I guess it's possible, but I'd like to hear it from your perspective. That does that instrumentality work? Does that shared reality work if it's manufactured?
Yeah, so I think that what we were just talking about before helps answer that question. So my work showing that authenticity really is so key. And so my sense is a lot of these instrumentality effects come up because you're, discovering this shared passion. Like you're really excited about this thing, and the other person is as well. And so you're kind of feeding off of each other in this excitement and helping each other towards your goals. Or maybe it's a mentor relationship where you still have that sense of shared passion and they're helping you. And that's very different from this kind of more manipulative instrumentality. And I think that the research showing that when we have an inauthentic interaction and say we're trying to make ourselves click with someone by agreeing with things that they're saying, even if we don't actually believe them, what my research suggests is that the other person won't end up feeling a sense of shared reality if they can tell.
They will.
People are, usually attuned to these kinds of signals.
Yeah. So, for lack of a more scientific word, we kind of have a bullshit meter that we pay attention to. So, I know that that's not terribly scientific, but yeah. So that's out there. But when it happens organically, when we, as you said, we go off script, and those things bubble up authentically, it can lead to very powerful relationships at work and very powerful impacts on your own performance then as well. Am I reading that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, there really are these important ripple effects, as you called them.
That's fantastic. Okay. I'm also interested if you could, I want to segue back to you spent a lot of years at Columbia University and you got to work with some real heavyweights there, Tori Higgins being among them. I mean, for those of people who don't know, Tori Higgins is a huge figure in the psychological research. And what's it like, I guess, my question is about what's it like to work with someone who has such a huge and broad base of reviewed papers under their belt. They have a lot of theories and ideas about how the world works and things that are interesting. How do you, as a PhD student, come to the table and say, "Yeah, but I want to look at this"? Like, how much individuation do you have, and how much autonomy do you have in a case where you're working with, this monolithic, character, this bigger than life person?
Oh, yeah, Tori is amazing. I think I had a really unique experience working with Tori in that most of his empirical work until I joined his lab had really been about regulatory focus and regulatory mode, which you've covered on the pod. And he'd done a little bit of work of shared reality, but really in the area of memory. And so I came to Columbia with, as Tori calls it, this burning passion. The way that he would describe that for each student would have their own kind of burning passion, and mine was studying shared reality in close relationships and in actual conversations, because it had never been studied in that space before. And so that's why I applied to work with Tori, because I felt like there was this big gap in the close relationships literature where shared reality, I thought, was the answer to, what is that feeling of just clicking with someone immediately, and that feeling of having merged minds with a really, really close partner or collaborator. And so that's why I sought out Tori to work on shared reality together. So it was really, really fun. We definitely had our own shared reality for sure. And
you did
a great advice.
Yeah. Oh, that's pretty cool. So you had that click with each other. I think that's fantastic. That's
Tori is a master. I'm sure we'll get into riffing a little bit later, and the importance of that for creating new shared realities as opposed to just like validating each other's realities. And Tori is a master riffer. So it was really fun. To
go there. Let's follow that thread because that is a really interesting aspect of shared reality. Tell us about what riffing is and how do you get there?
Right. So I think we tend to think about small talk as sort of this exchange of information about each other, whether that's with someone that we're just meeting, where we're exchanging information about our backgrounds, or that's someone that we already know and we're exchanging information about like what we did last weekend. And we just kind of trade parallel stories. So we kind of build beside each other. And that's very different from riffing or building on what the other person is saying. So to take
give us an example. Give us an example of what that would sound like.
Yeah, let's imagine that you're at a party and there's standing food. And, you're eating some chicken off a skewer, and someone comes up to you and asks you, "How's the chicken?" So you might, if you were just following the normal social script, say something like, "Oh, it's good. How's the lamb?" And, they would you would have this parallel exchange of information, but it would be boring and you probably would leave without that much connection. But instead, you could go off script and you could say, it's good, but maybe, again, this gets back to getting a little vulnerable. You might disclose that I'm kind of having a hard time getting the chicken off the skewer. And so then you might, devolve into joking about how they should really provide protective eyewear at any event with skewers, or, joking about how you should have like a skewer fencing competition or whatever. It wouldn't need to be funny, but just playful and spontaneous, and really riffing off of what the other person is saying to create this little world that you share for a moment that you can then call back to in your subsequent interactions that you wouldn't have had with anyone else. This
Right.
thing that's unique to the two of you, as opposed to just kind of trading information.
Yeah. I can imagine there's some of our listeners saying, that is totally me. I totally get it. That is exactly what I would do at the party if I had that chicken on a skewer that wasn't, that's exactly where I go. And I can also imagine exactly the opposite, that there are some listeners who are going, I would never say that. That's just crazy talk, Maya. No way would I ever go there.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. And when you think about it, it's something that we do really naturally as kids, right? Like kids don't engage in small talk. You meet someone and you just go up to them as like an 8-year-old and you say, do you want to play superheroes? And then you just play superheroes. And you suddenly, you skip all that stuff and you're just suddenly in this little world. You have a shared reality off the bat. But as adults, we've unlearned that basically. And we've learned all these social scripts that keep us in these kind of caged, closed off interactions. And so it can be really scary, I think, for that reason, to break some of those scripts. But again, what I've been finding in my research is that actually going off script can facilitate more of that shared reality creation and in turn, more of that connection and actual relationship formation.
Yeah. And I think if Nick Epley were in on this conversation, he would probably say, you should ask, when was the last time you cried? It would be okay, because that would be a very off script thing to say that might be vulnerable and revealing and could be really interesting. Yeah. But you're not actually advocating going that far off script, especially at work.
So I did run. So among the studies that I ran in grad school, I ran a speed dating study where I basically hosted speed dating events. And one time there was a guy at an event who asked every girl when the last time she cried was.
That was like a standard question for him?
During a 5-minute speed date. And let me tell you, it did not. It did not roll over well.
Oh, really? So how did the people who were being asked that question respond? And how did they feel?
It was so far off the script that they felt like they were being asked to be vulnerable. So I think there were sort of two issues. The first is that it was too far off script. So we want to be going a little off script without going so far. But more importantly, is that he was asking them to be vulnerable as opposed to offering up vulnerability himself. So had he disclosed the last time he had cried, maybe they would have been much more receptive and maybe they would have reciprocated that vulnerability. But asking someone else to be vulnerable without first offering up your own vulnerability is extremely different.
Yeah, that's a great point. Thank you for sharing that, because I think we have that built in naturally to want to be reciprocal, to want to reciprocate in conversations, but how that gets set up makes a difference. Yeah. Wow.
Exactly. And giving a little bit of it first. And then,
so what worked? What
progression, like a progression over time.
So what worked in the speed dating? I'm just curious. I went through some speed dating many years ago, between the time that I left my first marriage and found my absolutely fantastic, wonderful wife that I have today. But I did a couple of speed dating things, and I'm curious, were there any great techniques? Was it like, yeah, you got to make sure you do this because it wins every time?
So what we did find, so one of the, so that speed dating study was actually included in one of the papers that we've been discussing. So we did find that people who were more authentic were more likely to hit it off because the other person felt like they were creating more shared reality, and also really riffing and being able to signal to the other person that, we're creating this shared world together, even though it's only a 5-minute speed date. They were then more likely to put each other down as a match, to get each other's contact information.
I think that's so interesting. And just as a note to our listeners, we will be linking to these papers in the show notes, so that if you'd like to check out any of these 3 papers that we've been talking about, you are welcome to do that. So, Maya, let's get back to implications of shared reality at work. So, if I have this happening. I have this click moment with a coworker, and this is a person that maybe not on my team, but someone that I expect to be working with. And I have this little bit of riffing. It's like, oh yeah, like we've just merged minds. We just had this little moment, but then I don't see them for months. How do I keep that going? How do I think about the kernel of this shared reality, and how do I, sprinkle a little bit of pixie dust on it to keep it going?
Yeah, that's such a good question. So often we're focused on the conversation at hand, and then we can kind of forget about keeping those shared realities alive. So there's some cool work on callbacks. This is work by Mike Yeomans. It's also not yet published, but he's found that callbacks are a really powerful way of circling back, either within a conversation or after the fact. And a callback is basically where you pick a particular topic, and I would say they're probably the moments of shared reality in the conversation that you then call back to either later in the conversation or as your question is asking, even months later, instead of just checking in with them and saying, hey, how's it going? If they were the person that you had the skewer conversation with, you might say, hey, any skewer competitions lately or whatever. It might be just to kind of, wink at that conversation that you had and remind them, remember we had this little world we made together. I remember it. I haven't forgotten it. And you can it's more personal and more unique to the two of you, as opposed to sending a generic message that you could send to anyone.
Yeah. So you get to play on whatever that hook was, right? At some point in the future, just as a reminder, and hopefully the idea is that connects to that connective tissue that rebuilds, right?
Yeah, exactly. That thread through your conversations.
Yeah. I think about all of the wonderful business relationships I've had, and some that just worked so well, and some that I really wanted to work so well that just didn't. And I certainly don't understand why those that didn't work didn't. Mm-hmm. But your work on shared reality certainly makes sense. That I know that sense of shared mind, that like we had that little mind meld thing for just a second, and it was enough to propel us forward for future business things. I think that there is, I know that in my own life, and sometimes it's not been about work things at all.
Yes, yeah. So
right?
My current research with Catalina and Estrom that I mentioned earlier, we're now looking at how both shared reality about work topics and shared reality about non-work topics independently predict these outcomes in the workplace. So it does actually really matter how much you have a shared reality about music or whatever it might be with your colleagues, over and above just having a shared reality about the thing, the project that you're working on together.
Yeah. That gets me back to one of the speed round questions was a little bit about how your shared reality with your romantic partner can end up influencing your work relationships. Can you tell us more about that? Because this is still a bit mysterious to me.
Yeah, so this, I'll tell you about the study in particular that really examined this, that Catalina led. So this was a study conducted during the first 6 months ish of COVID, and it was conducted among frontline healthcare workers whose romantic partner was not a frontline healthcare worker. So they were going to the workplace experiencing this, totally unprecedented stress, this absolute crazy situation,
Right.
and then coming home and discussing it with their romantic partner. And what we found is that the more shared reality they had with their romantic partner, even though, again, their romantic partner was not part of that workplace, the more they found their work meaningful. And this was over time. So the more shared reality they experienced during the first wave of the pandemic, the more they found their work meaningful 6 months later, in October of 2020. And what we found that the mechanism was a reduced uncertainty. So especially during that time, what was happening with COVID, all of that was extremely uncertain. And so creating that sense of shared reality about the world at large, not even about their work, but just about the world at large with their romantic partner, helped them feel more certain of what was really going on in the world. And in turn, they found their work more important and meaningful.
That is fascinating. That is
really
talk about ripple effects, and to have this tumultuous time when the study was being conducted is a great exemplar of how powerful this could be when we're not in a global pandemic, right? When it's more or less business as usual.
Yeah. And we always have this, what we call this epistemic need, right? This need to understand and make sense of the world around us, figure out what's true, what's real, whether or not there is a pandemic ongoing. And so we always need to turn to other people to satisfy that epistemic need. And the extent to which we're able to do so has these important downstream effects on how much we feel like we really do understand and make sense of the world.
We are an affiliative species, aren't we? We just need each other. We need to collaborate. We need to cooperate. We just need it.
Yeah. And what I think is really ironic is, when you Google something like meaning in life, Google images, what will come up are pictures of people standing alone at the top of a mountain. It's really portrayed as this intra-psychic phenomenon, so really within the individual, when in fact, it's an interpersonal process. And there's a growing body of research really suggesting that, we find meaning through our interactions, through our relationships. And what this work with Catalina has shown is that it's really the shared reality, more so than just feeling happy in your relationship or loving your partner, even just feeling satisfied. It's more that sense of shared reality that's really driving these effects on meaning at work and in life.
So we should get rid of the lone person standing on top of the mountain, or basically the Marlboro Man, independent,
Right.
It's all about me conquering the world kind of stuff, and just focus on something so simple as having really healthy relationships with people that we love.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just love that. I absolutely love that. Why do we get it wrong? Why do you think we get this wrong?
Yeah, I think we have this sort of cult of individualism, and especially in the US, I think we kind of glorify, sort of like you were saying, the image of the Marlboro Man. We kind of glorify the lone cowboy when, as you were saying, we've never been like that. Humans are deeply social species, and that's a total myth. And also we know now extremely unhealthy, just from like a basic, mortality perspective. All the data shows that not having those deep interpersonal relationships is like smoking, 15 cigarettes a day, or I forgot what the exact statistic is, or, never exercising.
No, that's it. That is the statistics. 15 cigarettes a day is basically the equivalent of being lonely. That's how bad it is. Well, if Kurt were here, my guess is that he would bring up one of his favorite comments about the Marlboro Man, and that is that at the end of the day, the Marlboro Man still goes back to work with the other cowboys. He goes back to the campfire and sits around and sings songs and, eat beans and do all the things that cowboys do with other cowboys. That isn't glorified or heralded in the image. And it seems it seems kind of silly that we miss out on that bigger picture. Okay, I'm just editorializing, just like Kurt would do.
I completely agree.
I want to go. There's one other speed round question that we talked about this. We tend to not think that we have as much shared reality with people as we actually do. Is that a fair statement to say that we underestimate or undervalue the potential for that shared reality?
Oh, yes, I would say we undervalue it. I'm not totally. I think the potential. Yes, I think we probably do underestimate the potential for it,
Okay.
and that we, especially in certain contexts, where we, think we need to stick closer to the script, whether it's the workplace, or just any kind of social events where we want to stick to small talk, we might not give the other person as much credit as they deserve in terms of being someone that we could actually really hit it off with if we were to stray just a little bit off that script.
Why do you think that is?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think we just are taught, we're taught that we should play it safe. We're also afraid, I think, of disclosing a little bit more about ourselves. I think that we fear rejection as well, and so it can be difficult to make that leap. And then I think we can also get really hung up on differences between ourselves and other people, and so much of I think we tend to assume that we will hit it off with people who are the same as we are on paper, and that we won't be able to connect with people who are different, who have different backgrounds, who look different, who speak differently, who think differently than we do. When in fact, it's not that much about how similar or different you are on paper, and it's much more about what you can create together in that moment, that you wouldn't be able to predict from just looking at person A and person B on paper. And so that co-creation of reality is something that we forget is possible, even with people who are very different from us.
I just want to let the air hang around that. That was just so beautifully said. Thank you for that. That was a great comment. When I was looking at your CV, you got a couple of master's degrees at Columbia. One of them, right?
Right. They kind of automatically gave us the MPhil. I don't know why they do that, but we just.
Oh, really? So you weren't a philosophy major?
No, I wish. That would be so cool. No, for some reason at Columbia you get, when you just do the 5-year or 6-year, in my case, PhD, you get the master's after 2. Well, you do a master's thesis, and then you get, the MPhil, but you don't really submit anything for it. So it's very odd.
That's good to know, because I was wondering about to what degree philosophy as a field of study might have influenced your current work. That's really not a relevant question, it sounds like.
Intersubjectivity and the work of Merleau-Ponty in that space, on the double being, I think is really fascinating. But to be honest, I have nothing close to a master's in philosophy.
Okay, fair enough. Maya, Kurt and I talk a lot about finding your groove. We think that it's really important for people to be in their groove in their personal life and at work. I think that it's a really valuable thing. And first of all, does the idea of being in a good groove, make sense to you? I don't want to assault you with a completely crazy idea here.
That we also tend to think of as something individual, but really people groove together, right? More than anything, whether it's music or dancing together. When you're grooving, it's an interpersonal, who's grooving by themselves, right? It's something you do together. And so, yes, 100%.
That was beautifully said. I'm going to steal all of that, actually, because that was fantastic. To what degree can your work, or what degree does your work contribute to the idea of helping people find their groove and stay in their groove?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's such a great question. I feel like it is such an important feeling to feel like you're in a good groove. And I do think feeling like you're grooving with other people will help make that feeling of being in a groove stronger. And so shared reality, by allowing you to create that feeling of grooving with someone else, mentally grooving in some sense and emotionally grooving together, can be a really powerful way to feel like you're in your groove, like you're moving towards your goals, that your life is meaningful, and that you're contributing to some important purpose.
Yeah, thank you. That's really beautifully said. That really is. We have come to that point in the conversation where we have to talk about music. And Kurt would always blame me for always wanting to talk about it. But the fact is, if he was here, he'd like to talk about it as well. So let's start with this classic question of, if you were stranded on a desert island, you had a year that you only had one listening device and only two musical artists on that listening device. You get everything. You get their whole catalog. It's not like you just get one song or one record. You get everything. And Maya, this is not a go to your grave question. It's just today. It's this beautiful sunny day in Barcelona and this kind of overcast day here in Chapel Hill. But today, what two artists would you choose to take along with you?
This is by far the most difficult question that we've discussed today.
Your husband's not listening, okay?
Well, he would probably be one of them. I think I would have to pick as my first the first sets of the first discography that I would have accessible would be Basic Channel, the techno duo from the 90s. They released a ton of work in the 90s that like completely changed the landscape of electronic music. They had a huge influence, really opening up the space of not just like clubby techno, but listening techno. So they are known for these really hypnotic, kind of stripped down, just a kick drum, a like really deep bass line, and these really echoey, hazy chords that really slowly shift. So speaking of being in a groove, listening to them, you're just like entering a groove. It's extremely immersive. And that groove is like slowly changing over time. So it's very hypnotic, really beautiful. And I could, on a desert island, I could spend hours listening.
Wow. And that's Basic Duo?
Basic Channel.
Basic Channel. I'm not familiar with them. I love being introduced to new ideas, even if it's 30 years old. So, okay.
Yeah,
okay. So that's one. That's one. Who's your number two?
So I think I would have to pick my husband. I don't admit to him how much I listen to his music, but he's also a techno artist who makes experimental electronic music of many genres, actually. And his moniker is Gunnar Haslam, and he makes I would describe it as very kaleidoscopic, kind of psychedelic techno with lots of like twisting synth lines and, polyrhythms. It's very layered. And I as I said, I listen to his music more than I admit to him. So I would definitely want to be able to listen to that if I was stuck on a desert island.
Are they long tracks? When you use the word hypnotic, I started to think about songs that aren't just 3 minutes and 5 seconds.
Yeah. They're long, 7 or even 10 minutes. He has one 17-minute track. So it can be very long.
Okay. Maya, thank you so much for being a guest on Behavioral Grooves today. We really have enjoyed this conversation. And again, thanks for being a guest.
Thanks so much for having me. This was so, so lovely.
Welcome to our grooving session where Tim and I share ideas on what we learned from Tim's conversation with Maya, have a free-flowing discussion, and groove on whatever else comes into our really aligned brains, Tim. We have a mutual reality that we are sharing because we are so aligned, you and me. There we go.
Maybe just shy of a mind meld. This is not Dr. Spock stuff from Star Trek.
Yeah, I'm reaching through the computer to get to you.
It's not quite that, no. But
I was just thinking that. It's just not quite that.
Yeah.
That was, exactly.
See, that's how aligned we are.
I was thinking that
shared
too.
reality.
The shared reality of, I know what you're going to say.
Oh, sounds
yes. So I am so disappointed that I was not part of that conversation because it sounded great. And I just love the work that Maya does. And it's just crazy. So so tell me, you were the one who had the conversation. I listened to it, but you are the one with that conversation. What do you think we should groove on for this?
Well, we could spend an hour just grooving on the super high electronic fusion kind of music stuff that her husband produces. It's really cool. I was out listening to some of those tracks.
Yeah.
It's cool stuff. It really is. It's very moody and sort of atmospheric and wow. Yeah. Super, super cool stuff. But
our mind meld just disappeared there. Oh. we had a shared reality. I haven't listened to it, so I shouldn't say that, but it's cool.
Okay. So here's something that I reflected on as just thinking about this fantastic conversation with Maya. And that was, okay, so communication isn't enough. But you and I talk a lot about goal setting and goals as being like, how do we, as a focuser, right? As a motivator. Yeah. And so it's not so much that communication isn't enough. It's that we're not really aligned on the right goals, or that we're not aligned on the goals themselves. That simply exchanging information just doesn't guarantee understanding. And without that deeply shared understanding, goals are just it's going to be harder to get our goals done.
Well, if you don't have that shared reality, you don't have that shared understanding, people can hear the same words, but then it can actually have different interpretations, right?
Of course.
I mean, that's what I heard you guys talking about. Do you think that leads people to be in the grind at work instead of the groove?
Absolutely. Okay. Absolutely. We've all had the experience of what you described in the introduction with your team, where everybody thinks that everything is, perfect. And then they go off in their own directions and create, and then everybody comes back together and it was not what everybody expected. And that's a grind. That's rework. That's redoing the same ground that you've already been on.
And the hard part about that, at least in the work that I did, is that, with my team in that particular instance, it wasn't 180 degrees off, right? It wasn't exactly opposite. But I was pointing here, like top of my head, and they ended up kind of going, 15, 20 degrees off. And
so you were at due north and they were like north by northeast.
Yeah. Or north by northwest, whichever.
Or north by northwest. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Either way. So, but I think that there's enough commonality that you kind of go, oh yeah, we have that shared reality. We have that alignment. But then there's just more than enough that's off that shows that we don't. So how do we get over that, Tim? What did Maya and you talk about to get over that?
Well, the way that I process this conversation is changing the interactions that you have with your team away from the, did I say that? Or do you understand it? To, are we really looking at this the same way? Or how can we ensure that we're looking at this the same way? That way, we move away from this transactional kind of vibe that you get with the grind, where people are just exchanging information. but don't really feel connected or understood. And that, I think that allows us to move to an area where there's less friction, more groove, more flow.
Yeah.
Basically.
So actively checking for that alignment.
I think so. I think that that's a pretty key part of it is until you get to know the other person and that you believe that you both have that shared reality, it's just checking in.
Can I push back? I think it's even once we know that person, but context matters, right?
Yeah. Yes.
So let's make sure we have the same shared reality about the context, the environment, the situation, the problem that we're facing, whatever that would be.
Yeah.
Because I can think of this in many different terms. I mean, we might be copacetic, you and I together, and then we're going to go and we're going to talk to somebody and we both read their book, but you're taking one interpretation of the book. I'm taking another interpretation of the book. And that may not be bad for the show, but if we were trying to build a program based off of that, it would be very difficult to be able to do, right? I mean, if we were going to build a workshop or something based upon that, or even after our conversation with that person, right? Because you're going one way, I'm going another. So that I think is really important. So
I agree. And that happens all the time with us. It's not uncommon for us to not be perfectly aligned. But what is common is that we're also really good at just checking in. How does this resonate with you? I mean, we've been doing this for 8 years. There are some times when I think, I wonder if Kurt would be thinking about it from this perspective. I do.
I do the same thing with you. It's like, okay, let's put myself in Tim's shoes. How would he see this? Okay. He'd like that classical music thing and talk about the weird zippophone or whatever they're playing and, all those kind of things. Yeah, that'd be cool. All right.
And then when we do that, when we do take that time to measure twice and cut once up front, it reduces the friction. Right? It actually increases our ability to stay in our groove, I think. It gives us momentum.
So we've been doing this for 8 years, and we just recently started to do a pre-interview check-in meeting that was specifically, right? I mean, how long is it? It's taken us 7.5, almost 8 years to do this. And I will tell you that has been amazing for us to do this check-in, to get the shared reality about how are we approaching this interview? What are we each have done. I mean, we write up the questions, you write up most of them. I come in and ad libs here and there and do different things, but having that conversation of just like making sure we're in alignment has done an amazing thing, at least from my perspective, of reducing that friction. So I don't ask something out and you give me that look of, where are you going with this, Kurt? What stupid idea do you have? Right. And
because I'm not judgmental.
Right. Yeah.
But I'd even go so far as to say that those meetings that we have in prep for our interviews are really an efficiency engine. They really boost our efficiency. They really amplify our efficiency. And it's about alignment with a capital A. It really, really helps.
Not only is it more efficient, but it's a better, listeners might disagree with this, but it's a better interview, right? And there is a higher quality output from what we do when we do that. When we talk about, so how would we respond if they said X, how are we thinking about this? How are we doing that? So we're in this aligned way of looking at that interview coming forward. So,
I would also say that adds meaning to what our conversations are like. That when we feel like we've been able to sort of air our individual perspectives, right? It reinforces our sense that our experiences are valid. And I think that it's kind of a source of confidence and empowerment.
Yeah.
It is how I feel better about going into the interviews.
Well, it feels like we're on the same wavelength, right? It feels like we're together on these things, as opposed to you doing your interview, me doing my interview, and then we kind of cross paths a little bit. Like,
well,
this is like, if it's your time and it's my time, I thought I could have some pizza on our time, right? Isn't that from Spicoli from Fast Times at Ridgemont High? I totally misquoted there, but yeah.
It works. Yeah. But that's what the groove is, right? The groove is relationship. It's relational, right? It's the sense of we're in this together. And and that's the natural human condition of collaborating and cooperating that just adds meaning to our lives. I think that's kind of the
And I think that meaning part is so important, and it's co-created through that social experience, that interaction. So you're co-creating meaning.
Yeah.
And I mean, we've had conversations about purpose and big P and little p, but it is that social interaction, that connectivity, that shared reality that we are building. I mean, I think that all works really well. I mean, you play in a band, right? Isn't that how that works in a band?
It is how it works in a band. Yes, because it is. Ultimately, it's about finding the rhythms and the harmonies and everything to align. And it takes a little bit to get there. But I think Maya's thesis is find that at work, find that with your coworkers, develop that sense of shared reality in a way that you both understood clearly what the goals are whenever you're working on something together, because increases productivity, increases meaning, big benefits. Yeah.
So it's about working really hard and making all this really hard and difficult. Is that what it is? Shared reality is hard, isn't it?
It's not about working harder. It's about getting in sync, right?
Okay. Yeah. So I would say it's about finding your groove with your coworkers, like you talked about, right? And you can both benefit then from being less in the grind.
I think that's a fantastic way of wrapping it up. Father Kurt, well done.
Father Kurt. I don't even know how to do any of that, so I'm not going to do it. All right. So Groovers, listeners, if you have not joined our Behavior Grooves community page on Facebook, we hype on this you usually probably shut this off right now, but if you don't shut it off yet, because you should just go out there and join our Facebook Behavioral Grooves community. It's a fun, interactive community. Lots of people. I think some of them listen to the show, some of them don't, but it doesn't matter because there's great questions, great interaction, fantastic thing, and you're missing out if you don't go out there and join that. And
agreed. And if you're not subscribed to our Substack, sign up. Every week, lots of people are signing up for the Substack, and we want you to be part of our growth story. So get on the bandwagon.
And get on that bandwagon and get on the Patreon bandwagon too. Because if you want to really support us, like hop on our Patreon page and help us pay for our producer, help us pay for the online, platform that we aren't even using right now because it broke down, but it would cost us money every month, and all of the other things that go into creating this podcast for your enjoyment. And, we're just asking to help us offset the costs that it does for us, because it is costing us. So, yeah.
Or here's another way of thinking about it. The $10 a month that you could give to us,
just $10
to Behavioral Grooves, helps ensure that the archive of more than 500 programs, more than 600 hours of content stays available for people who are curious about why we do what we do. That those conversations can still be used, whether it's at work, if you're an academic, if you're using the podcast in the classroom, if you're a manager who's trying to figure out how can I really boost my game. We have episodes that are 3 years old that are still fantastic. At
5 years old,
5 years old, 9 years, not even 9 years old,
not
8 years old.
We're not that old yet.
But
next year, though. But it could be 9 years old if you contribute, because then it'll be archived out there and it'll be available. But it might not be. We might not be able to afford this.
Yes. So with that, we hope you use our conversation with Maya to help you this week as you go out and create a shared reality and find your groove.
Mine now.